Welcome to the HITea With Grace podcast, where we spill the tea on HIT. I'm thrilled to be here at the ViVE conference with Rachel Blum, VP of Sales and Partnerships at Verato. Thanks for joining me. Tell me a little bit about the career path that brought you to your role today at Verato.
I was anti-email in college. I really hated everything computers and technology. It's a shocker that I'm in the world of tech, to be honest, but that's where jobs are. And when you have to pay rent, you find your way to those jobs. Specifically in sales, I was working at a tech company in marketing, and it just wasn't doing it for me. I knew I wanted to get into sales, and I looked around and I saw all these cold callers, all these dudes just everywhere. And I watched even the dudes that had the best numbers weren't getting the job. It was a very boys club thing. And I said, well, I'm not a boy and I don't want to play that game, but I would like to get into sales. So I left the big company, went to a small company. There's more opportunity to wear many hats. And I was offered the opportunity to just jump right in and give it a try. And my very first cold call ever, person picked up, which they don't do, and was interested. And that was one of our first customers.
Wow.
So I was hooked after that. It's never been that easy since then.
Nature's way of telling you were good at this stuff.
Like, let's give it a try. And the healthcare part, when I started at Verato, we weren't a healthcare company. We had this amazing technology to understand who's who. And we were trying to figure out, where is this a big problem? Our founder had a lot of health issues related to being a veteran, and he struggled with his name and going to get labs. And he said, why is this so hard? And we realized that identity in healthcare is a really big problem. And it was shocking to me. Like, it really was shocking. I come in here, how do you not know who I am? Are there really that many Rachel Blums where you're going to mess up my identity? And it's like, yes, there are. And yes, they will mess up your identity. And it's really scary when that happens. So we, a lot of folks have stories about their experiences with healthcare and wanting to come in the industry and make it better. And I really came in kind of eyes wide open. Like, I had no idea all the problems that were in it. And I feel lucky that I don't have stories like that pushed me into the industry. Kind of just found myself here and now, grateful to be working with folks who are passionate about this work.
It's so interesting to me how personal healthcare is, and yet how impersonal that experience and that understanding of healthcare, when you really know about healthcare, how impersonal that is. So I'm wondering, as we're kind of diving into talking about trends in the space, for those who aren't familiar with the term, can you describe health master data management?
So there is a IT-centric term called master data management, and that's been around for quite a while. No one's tried to tackle it specifically for healthcare because healthcare has always been a little bit behind. So master data management is well known in hospitality and retail and finance. Healthcare didn't really see patients as consumers, so they weren't connecting the omni-channel information for a patient or a consumer across these sources. So what Verato specializes in is healthcare data is different than retail. It's important to understand. If I'm in hospitality and I want to understand, do you prefer carbonated water or still water? If I get that wrong, no big deal. Mm-hmm. If you mix my record up with someone else's record and you think I have, and I actually talked to someone today who had this problem, you think I have diabetes and I don't, that's a real big issue. It's a really big issue. So understanding identity is a bigger challenge in healthcare than other industries. And it's a harder problem to solve. And that's why you see many master data management companies, they don't venture into healthcare, right? Mm-hmm. They kind of stick to the other industries. We wanted to take that challenge head on. Actually, our CRO has a term he likes to use for our culture, run into the spike. Mm-hmm. So find the problems, let's not avoid them, let's run into them head on and work through them directly.
So I'm wondering, what problems exist when we don't even know who is who?
So I'll give you the example of someone I spoke with today who had a very personal story related to identity. She was pregnant with her first child and her last name was Smith. I'm not going to give her first name, but at the time, her last name was Smith, a very common name. She got a call and she was actually a nurse in labor and delivery. She got a call from her doctor saying, you need to come in right away. You have an ectopic pregnancy, which is very serious, which is essentially you have to eliminate the pregnancy at that point. And her knowing what she knows, she said, I don't have that. Like, I don't have those symptoms. I don't have that pain. She goes in, realizes it's another person with her same name who is also pregnant. And she caught it because she has this knowledge. And she advocated for herself. And so she thinks, when I was talking to her, she goes, I think about this all the time. My daughter's 26 now, and it could have not been because they got my record wrong. And that wasn't the dark ages. I mean, that was just 26 years ago.
Wow.
And it's still happening. And this is the more I get into it, while I wasn't driven to healthcare by a personal experience, but the more stories I hear like this.
I wonder, with stories like this, what obstacles are keeping health systems from implementing solutions to this serious issue, this problem?
Yeah, so this problem exists everywhere. Every health system we talk to across the board, from the small, rural, local systems to the big multi-billion-dollar systems, identity is an issue. What we find is the ability to connect it to a financial narrative, right? So there is the connection to patient experience, like what this woman, there's a connection to risk. So there's a risk connection, but really creating that financial narrative to push the solution for this problem. So we've invested in the value program, where we go in and we sit down and look at what are the different pain points you're experiencing related to identity and how connect that both to cost savings, revenue, and risk avoidance. We try to approach that, but a lot of folks, it really is, can we get the finance team to see the impact of this on a patient's experience?
How technically difficult is this?
But we're up and live in 60 days. We can have, especially if you define the different use cases that we're going after, you'll see ROI pretty quickly. There's always change management. There's always the people aspect to the technology that sometimes gets forgotten. But, the initial hurdle is getting the buy-in from the finance folks that, yes, this actually affects the bottom line. Even though we all know it affects the patient experience, it affects patient care, it affects the reason why most of us are here. And it's getting the spreadsheet bean counters to see the same thing.
Totally see. I mean, you and I are on the same, and everybody who's listening is like, yeah, girl, duh, right? This is like, you should not be confused with anyone else. They should know who you are at the very least. What are your thoughts on what that looks like moving forward? How do we better treat these people as human beings and not just a number or a data point?
Yeah, it's funny because the word consumer is still a little taboo, yet treating someone as a consumer is almost better than treating them as a patient. And
the patient is always right, right?
Customer's always
right.
Like
you just can't help but think
we
that
definitely
way.
see the term in more competitive markets because they are competing with other health systems. You have to know who your patient is in order to service them properly and make them want to come back.
So I can't have you go away from the conversation and not say how is AI driving change in the patient identity space?
Yeah, so I would say AI is actually shining light on the problem of patient identity more so than changing how we are addressing patient identity. Of course, we're building AI into our system to make it even easier to comprehend why we make decisions about identity that we do. But I had a conversation today with a CIO who is investing heavily in AI in the CRM space and call center and care management. And he said, our biggest problem is it's not pulling data holistically about the patient, so the decisions the AI is making is going to be affected. So we really need to understand identity. We need to understand the identity of the providers the patient's interacting with, identity of the patient across various EHRs and external data sources we have about that patient to feed AI to make it effective. And so it's shining light on this gap that we all know exists. So I'm actually excited about AI just from, selfishly from a sales perspective, because like I said before, everyone has the problem and now it's becoming a blocker to doing something innovative that they've already invested in. And this thing you've invested in won't work unless you really understand who the patient is. And by the way, that's going to impact a lot of other things that we already know it's going to impact, but we're going to be able to tag on to this innovation to shine light on the problem that has been there for years.
So cool, and such a great way to think about AI, and something I haven't even heard of yet from somebody that I've spoken with. So I'm thrilled to hear it from you and think about it in that way, that it's not just solving the problems, but showing more problems.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. So, we at HITea With Grace, we like to learn about what drives women leaders in healthcare technology. And as a leader yourself, I'm wondering, what are some habits that you have implemented to help work your best and make a difference?
Yeah, so this is actually a pretty hard question. For me personally, I'm coming back I have 3 children under 4, twin infants.
Wow.
And there is a piece of my identity, speaking of identity, definitely connected to work.
Yeah.
And coming back was difficult because I'm sleep deprived. My hormones are everywhere. I don't have patience for silly things. And so being a leader while being empathetic, it's hard to be empathetic with people getting a full night's sleep. It's just hard.
Oh, yeah. Wait, you're trying to say that to me and you had a full night of sleep?
Yeah. So, I like to lead with empathy, lead by example. That's just my style. And I found that difficult in this return back. So, what drives me is I really felt most like myself when I was back at work. And it really is there's something fulfilling about just working with people you respect, working on solving tough problems together. And, I've been with Verato for almost 10 years now for a reason, because of the people around me that I work with every day. But when you say what drives you, it's I just like solving problems with other people.
Yeah.
That's
so
simple.
Inspiring. I know a lot of us have experienced that odd feeling of having kids and then coming back in the workforce and be like, what?
Yeah. What is this world?
People did this for the whole history of the universe?
Very strange return. I don't know if you've been watching that show Severance, but I kind of watched it for the first time when I was on leave, and this idea of separating your work self from your inner self and your outer self. And I was on leave and I would talk to my colleagues, and that felt like a totally different world.
Yeah.
And we have these different personas.
In different parts of our...
And sometimes they're totally separate. And with each person, I find it different. So
truly fascinating and truly something to think about, about yourself. It's what are those parts? And it's okay. Right. It's okay to have those different parts. Yeah, I am a bomb ass bitch at work, right? And then, I am a bomb ass mom at home. It can happen. And it's fantastic and interesting. And I love to hear that perspective from you. And, if you could give your younger self a piece of advice, or even yourself before having kids, what would that piece of advice be, either personal or career?
I wouldn't really change anything. To be honest, I think I approached work with an open mind, and the whole sales thing, I didn't know that existed. My parents own a small business and promotional products. This whole corporate world is foreign to me. I didn't grow up seeing that at all. I don't think I would do anything differently.
Well, I think that's such an interesting learning for our listeners too, is to approach life with an open mind. I think some people come in with such a closed mind, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get there. And it never ends up happening the way you think.
Yeah, I talked to someone today who their boss couldn't be here because he was on a ski trip with his family. And he said, he has so much FOMO. He'd much rather be here. And I thought, if I'd rather be at a conference on a holiday weekend than with my family, I think I've done something wrong for me personally.
No, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's it.
So, there's perspective that you gain as things come across your way. But back to your question of what I tell my younger self is, no, just keep an open mind and be open to opportunities. And not everything's going to work out, and that's okay. There's other things to do. And even at Verato in the 10 years, I've worn a lot of different hats here. I've worked with a lot of different sales leaders and different styles. And, I'm learning a lot still along the way. And that's what drives me too, is I love learning and solving new problems.
Learning never stops, guys.
Yep.
No matter how high up you go, you're always going to be learning. So to finish this conversation off right, where can our listeners find you online?
I am on LinkedIn. My title is Mother of Dragons because my twins are dragons by the Chinese calendars.
I love it.
Rachel Blum. I work with Verato. That's V as in Victor, ERATO. If you can't tell, I've left a lot of voicemails.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so great to learn from you.
Yeah.
Check out the HITea With Grace podcast for more interviews with great guests like Rachel today. Cheers.
Like a Girl Media is more than a media network. It's a community. We want to meet you and amplify your voice and the voices of outstanding women innovating in healthcare. Interested in starting your own podcast or hosting an event near you? Connect with us online or in person. We're here to support and empower you.